everyone, back to you today's second video. We're going to have a look at weather next week to 10 days. For today's second video, earlier on we released the April month head forecast. That's on the month head forecast and updates page. You can find that via the home page. Just scroll down, there'll be a button that will take you there. Going to be quite an interesting April, I think. I'll let you check out the 8-month head forecast if you want to know more. This is looking at weather next week to 10 days then, and it's going to take us into the second week of the month. I think we're going to go more unsettled next week. Now, what's a suggestion over weekend? We might get things a bit colder next week. I'm not sure about that, but I think we are going to turn things quite a bit more unsettled. There will be some rain and showers coming through after a mostly dry week this week. I'll show you the detail in a second. Just say the competition will be launching at the weekend. We're going to launch it on Sunday, run it for a week, and the winner will be announced on Easter Sunday. We're teaming up with metcheck.co.uk weather instrumentation. I'll have more about that later in the week. So, going to start off with the 500 millibar height anomaly charts. We've got the ECMWF here on the top, and the GFS, which you have a look at in a moment, is on the bottom. 500 millibars, 8,000 meters, an area in the atmosphere, high pressure, low pressure, are being moved around by the jet stream running above. Blue extrapolates to low pressure, and orange, red, bright colours extrapolates to high pressure. The ECMWF has a ridge here to the east, as looking out to the 7 to 10 day time frame. Also a ridge out in the central part of the Atlantic Ocean. In between, there's probably a bit of a trough here, doing something a bit like that with the jet stream. So what actually looks like quite a settled anomaly probably isn't that settled. It's probably quite unsettled, that actually. And the air, though, it's not all that cold because it's been drawn up from a southerly, southwesterly type direction. So we don't get that cold snap that the models were playing with next week on the eastern Europe. But GFS is similar, but it's more unsettled. So we've got an actual trough of below average height centering over the top of the UK. Ridges out in the Atlantic. I'm doing something a bit like that with the jet stream. So again, that does look quite unsettled. There's a trough within the 500 millibar flow, so there'll be showers or longer spells of rain coming in with that trough of low pressure. It's probably a bit cooler than the ECMWF as well, because the air is coming down from sort of a northerly point in the Atlantic Ocean, so that's quite cool as well as being quite unsettled. These are the GFS ensembles next couple of weeks. The red line here is a 30-year temperature average. Right now, very significantly milder than average. You get a little bit of a dip coming at the end of the week, but essentially through the rest of this week and into the weekend, it looks like we've got really quite mild upper air temperatures indeed. That's to around the 9th, 10th of April. So we're going to have a really mild start to April. But after that, we've got a drop in the temperature occurring, dropping back to average now with these ensembles. Yesterday, they was going colder than average for next week. Now it looks like we're just dropping the temperatures down to average. So the chance of cold weather is being reduced next week. But it looks like it's turning more unsettled, most definitely. So the precipitation part of the ensemble shows lots of dry weather for the rest of this week and into the weekend. But then next week, the rainfall spikes are coming back. You wouldn't say it's a washout of the period, but it certainly looks more unsettled through the second week of April. And cooler as well, but not necessarily all that cold. Temperature anomalies for the next week are looking milder than average through the UK and most parts of Europe as well. Precipitation anomalies looking drier than average. So the first week to 10 days going to be solidly mild and dry, I think. This is how the GFS is looking for Friday then. High pressure is over UK and in control and dominating the weather. That high pressure remains with us into the weekend as well. Eventually, though, by Sunday, that high pressure beginning to slip in towards Eastern Europe, and low pressure is starting to come in from off the Atlantic. That could be bringing some outbreaks of rain into the north and west on Sunday, and then that probably spreads across the country into the start of next week. So this is a week away, Monday 10th of April, when low pressure has taken over the pattern. It's looking quite unsettled with showers or longer spells of rain. And then running up to day 10, that low pressure stays with us. We actually get to day 10, which is Thursday the 13th of April. and we're moving, just before Easter, we're moving that low pressure into Central Europe, but there's more low pressure in the Atlantic waiting in the wings. Now notice heights are rising generally to the north, so all of this area, we're beginning to see pressure starting to rise. This doesn't line up to produce any cold weather for us as we're heading in towards the middle of April. The upper air temperatures on day 10 actually look quite mild with the cold air up there to the north. But as we run through, actually we go to the middle part of April, so this is going over the Easter weekend. There'll be a new Easter update tomorrow, by the way, but we go over the Easter weekend. We keep low pressure very close to the country, so there's a lot of rain in with that, but the main thing to focus on is the way pressure is rising over Greenland and stretching back actually up in towards the North Pole. It's not inconceivable that could give us a late blast of cold northeasterly winds as we get into the second half of April. But of course that's a very long way off, and I wouldn't be necessarily all that concerned about it. Perhaps more generally, the worry would be more for sort of the end of the spring and into the summer. I've been talking a bit recently about the way the Arctic Oscillation moves in sort of periods of 3-4 months at a time. We've had around 4 months of a positive Arctic Oscillation, which means we generally have low pressure up over the North Pole. If this is the beginnings of a shift in the Arctic Oscillation towards a negative AO, we might see that negative AO running on for perhaps a couple of months, maybe even more. And of course that will then begin to impact the end of the spring and even into the start of the summer with northern blocking. And northern blocking is never a very good sign because it'll push low pressure underneath it. As you see on that chart, actually, that is a solidly negative Arctic Oscillation type chart. The reason the Arctic Oscillation would be negative with that is that you've got the high pressure. It's always the weather that's driving the index, but you'd have a negative Arctic Oscillation and you see what happens. You get low pressure running underneath it, and in summer, of course, that's not what we want at all. But sort of very long way off, so I wouldn't necessarily be all that concerned. And anyway, the model might be overdoing that blocking signal for the middle and second half of April. It does look more unsettled, though, I think, next week. Finally, have a look at the east of the US. So we've got that ridge across the country on Friday into the weekend. That high pressure stays with us. I think it's going to be a very pleasant weekend. We'll start to drag up the air from the south, so temperatures will become quite warm over the weekend as well. Into next week, low pressure is moving in off the Atlantic, so we get a much more unsettled period at the start of next week. And then we go up towards day 10, which is Thursday, 13th of April. Building just a little bit of a transient ridge over the country, but overall that again looks quite an unsettled chart. I suspect this little transient ridge here will very quickly be flattened off by these areas of low pressure coming in from off the Atlantic. So unfortunately, there we go, unfortunately it could all be shaping up to give us quite an unsettled period around middle of the month. This year happens to be Easter, so it could all be shaping up to give us quite an unsettled Easter. I'm afraid we'll have another Easter update tomorrow evening. Did the first one, of course, last night. So lots of dry weather coming up for the rest of this week. Temperatures are going to be quite pleasant over the weekend. It's going to turn quite warm and it'll still be pretty dry. Early next week looks like we start to break things down, turns more unsettled, and that probably sets us up for a more unsettled middle phase to April. Doesn't look like we're going to get overly cold with this. It looks like it's going to be generally quite mild and unsettled rather than cold and unsettled. But of course, we'll keep an eye on that. Well, that's all for now. Check out the April month-end forecast if you've not yet done so. But that's all for now, and thanks for watching.